So we have to go back and look at our European partners, our Asian partners.
Hello and welcome, I'm Thomas Porteous and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at some of the top headlines this hour. The Ukrainian capital of Kyiv is under a massive Russian attack with explosions heard in the city and air defences in action. The military says multiple missiles are being deployed against the capital. The Russian action takes place just 2 days before Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is due to meet President Donald Trump in the United States. The leaders plan to discuss details of a possible accord to settle the near 4-year war. Thailand and Cambodia agreed to an immediate ceasefire, pledging to halt weeks of deadly border clashes from noon local time. A joint statement says the truce covers all weapons and bans attacks on civilians, infrastructure and military targets. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio urges restraint and diplomacy as violence in Yemen escalates. He says Washington supports efforts towards a lasting solution while avoiding taking sides between Saudi Arabia and the UAE. Israel becomes the first country to formally recognize Somaliland as an independent state, with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu promising cooperation in key sectors. Somalia opposes succession, while President Trump says he does not support US recognition. The UN Secretary General says attacks on civilians and places of worship are unacceptable and calls for those responsible to be brought to justice. At least 8 worshippers are killed in an explosion at a mosque in the predominantly Alawite area of Homs, Syria. Argentina's Congress approves the 2026 budget, the first under Javier Milei, including about $102 billion in spending and projecting 5% growth with a 10.1% inflation. The plan forecasts a primary surplus of 1.2% of GDP, marking a return to formal budget approval after 2 years of rollovers. French police arrest a man suspected of stabbing 3 women in Paris at the year-end festivities. Prosecutors say he is tracked through surveillance footage and his mobile phone before being detained north of the French capital. Now we start this hour in Africa, and according to the Nigerian government, US-backed airstrikes in Nigeria have hit 2 Islamic State-linked camps in the Boni forests of Sokoto. The strikes targeted foreign fighters infiltrating from the Sahel and were carried out on Christmas Day following extensive intelligence gathering and operational planning. Approved by Nigerian President Bola Tinubu, the strikes were launched from maritime platforms in the Gulf of Guinea using MQ-9 Reaper drones. And earlier, US President Donald Trump announced the strike on social media, saying the group had been targeting Christians in the region. 16 GPS-guided precision munitions were deployed successfully, neutralizing ISIS elements. The Nigerian government reported no civilian casualties, though debris fell in 2 towns. Authorities in Sokoto State have urged calm, stressing that the operation is designed to protect lives and property. Joining us now is Ayanuga Olugbenga-Paul, a public affairs analyst, joining us live from Lagos in Nigeria. Thank you very much for joining us, Ayanuga, here on NewsX World. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. Of course, now we've got a confirmation of where these strikes took place, and of course, the United States has gladly claimed responsibility of working along with the Nigerian government. Are these strikes likely to have any impact on the operations of Islamic State in that region? And in terms of international law, are these US strikes adhering to that? Hello?
Hello, yes. When it comes to international law, whether US strike is adhering to set protocol, I think that brings a lot of debate that I would not like us to really go into right now, because that will shift the focus from the meat of the matter, which is the effectiveness of this strike on the location where it landed. From several reports, both from locals in the area of the state and locals from adjoining areas, even from Niger Republic, it has been said that there were no civilian casualty and that the strike was able to hit a high value target where the Lakurawa, because even though the President Donald Trump called them ISIS, we don't have ISIS or its affiliate in Nigeria. But going through that semantics, I think is more important to terrorist analysts than to the people who just want to be free, because ideologically and the way they carry out their
Apologies.
either GNIM, Lakurawa, they all
Okay, we
the
seem,
same
I
way
Anuga, I do
around.
apologise. We seem to be having some network issues with you there. Thank you very much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to get you here on the programme, but unfortunately we have to move on. We move on, and Turkey says that Russia has provided fresh financing worth $9 billion for the Akuyu nuclear plant, which comes as Ankara pushes ahead with plans to expand its domestic energy capacity. Turkey's energy minister has said that the funding will support construction of the Akunu plant in the Mediterranean province of Mersin, and the facility is Turkey's first nuclear power station and is being built by Russia's state-owned company Rosatom under a $20 billion deal signed back in 2010. The project was originally expected to come online this year but faced delays, with Turkish officials now aiming for the plant to become operational in 2026. Additionally, the Energy Ministry reports that Ankara is also in talks with South Korea, China, Russia and the United States on potential nuclear power developments in the top Sinop province and the Thrace region. Joining us now is Major General Gigi Davidi, an international relations and defence expert, joining us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for joining us. Of course, $9 billion, a considerable amount of funding going from Moscow over to Ankara in order to build this nuclear plant. What more can you tell us about the Ankara and Moscow alliance and how this development is especially significant in terms of it?
It was a pleasure to be on the NewsX World. Well, the first and foremost, Russia and Turkey have very good relations. While Turkey is a member of NATO, but still it has, I think, long-stated historical relation with Russia, and it does cooperate on a number of avenues. In fact, even the ongoing the war in Ukraine, Turkey has been providing certain amount of military support to Russia and even to its fleet in the Mediterranean. Now, coming back to this deal or the nuclear plant that is being funded by Moscow to the tune of $9 billion. In fact, this agreement was signed somewhere 2010, and it was part of the 20 billion package because Turkey wants to diversify into the renewable sources of energy, and a nuclear plant and also solar are high on the agenda. Now, this nuclear plant will have 3+ reactors of Russia, that is the VER, each with a capacity of around 1,200 megawatts, and this will definitely contribute to the Turkish energy requirement. And you rightly said, Turkey is also exploring the other avenues like America, South Korea, China, for further, expanding its nuclear capacity. And also, Turkey is in dialogue or talks with Saudi Arabia regarding the solar energy, because that is another avenue which the Turkish government is exploiting. And this solar, talks that are going on would be a huge investment, and it's to the tune of 5,000 megawatt capacity, plant is being under consideration. So all I can say is that Turkey is looking forward to, diversifying its energy requirement, and therefore solar and nuclear energy is actually being exploited. And this $9 billion nuclear plant is one of the measures that is being taken by the Turkish government. Thomas.
Yeah, and given that Rosatom, a state-owned Russian company, is building and financing this plant, how dependent does that make? Does this make Turkey on Russia for decades to come?
Well, you are right, but as I mentioned earlier, Turkey plays both ways because it is part of NATO, and therefore it has a stake in the Europe's security, and also is aligned with America because it has just junked the S-400 missiles to go in for F-35 American fighters. So therefore, Turkey has the geographic advantage to play both ways. Well, to some extent, the dependency will be there because after nuclear energy and nuclear technology is on the high end. But I think, as I said, that Turkey also believes in the multilateral engagements. So therefore, this is the requirement, and it is more on the commercial side, and also possibly it will balance out the trade between Turkey and Russia. Thomas.
Yes, do stay with us, Major General Davidi, as we move on to our next story. And protests have erupted in Tokyo as demonstrators opposed the restart of Japan's largest nuclear power plant. The Kashiwazaki Kariwa plant in Niigata Prefecture will resume operations more than a decade after the Fukushima disaster. The restart was approved by Niigata Governor Hideo Hanuzumi and the Prefectural Assembly, allowing TEPCO to bring the plant back online. Protesters cited aging facilities, past fires, a nearby fault line, and lingering effects from Fukushima, including displaced residents and rising thyroid cancer among children. Demonstrators also warned that government plans to revise nuclear principles could repeat historical mistakes and endanger public safety. Let's listen in to some of the protesters.
事故があってから東京電力の再稼働は初めてなんです。で前に地震があった時にね、一部火災があったことあるんですよ。それで断層があるとも言われてるんですよね。だからそれとあとはね、新潟はね、5、60年前にね、一度大きな地震
動かす新潟県の原発は東京電力、福島第一原発の事故を起こした東京電力なので、それが一番もうとにかく心配ですし、はい、動かすべきではないと思ってます。
福島はまだ全然終わってないし、まだ2万も3万もの人が避難したまんまだし、子どもたちが甲状腺がんになって、それも国は認めてないし、とんでもないですよ。なのに今すごく再稼働しようとしてるから。
Joining us once again is Major General Gigi Davidi. Thank you very much for joining us. Of course, a hugely significant day for Japan and its nuclear industry. Why has this restart triggered such strong public anger, even more than a decade after Fukushima?
If we go back point in time, in 2011, there was a tragic accident in Fukushima, which did cause loss of life, and also there was a setback as far as the nuclear energy program was concerned. And as a sequel to this accident, 54 reactors were actually stopped production, they were shut down. And this Kashiwazaki Kariwa was one of those reactors. Now, why people are protesting? Basically, there are three reasons. Firstly, this nuclear reactor is an old one, and also it has been there have been a couple of earthquakes and also certain fires and such like hazards in this nuclear plant. So people are skeptical that they should not have another Fukushima type of disaster. And that is why they are actually protesting on this. And this is the Tokyo, electric company, that is TEPCO, which is going to restart. And TEPCO's own record was also a bit of question mark, because there are a number of finger pointing as to how safe their operations have been. So the point is that people are definitely concerned, because even today they say about 20 to 30,000 people are still refugees post the Fukushima tragedy, and many are still suffering from the radiation effects, especially the throat cancer, while government has denied these allegations. So it's a very contentious issue, it's a very sensitive issue. Going by the past record, people have rightly protested, and they are concerned because at the end of the day, such tragedy take a heavy toll on the people at large, and that's why these protests are going on. Thomas.
Yes, and of course, do you think this marks a turning point for Japan and its nuclear comeback, or is it a dangerous gamble?
Definitely, because see, nuclear energy, while it's known to be a good alternate to the fossil fuels, and as far as Japan is concerned, they have very little or almost negligible oil is concerned, and they are importing oil, and that dependency on the energy supply lines. So definitely they had gone on a big way for the nuclear energy. But this definitely suffered a setback, as I said, in 2011 after the Fukushima tragedy. Now people want to be assured that whatever the nuclear reactors are, they are fully safe, and they don't want to have another tragedy like they suffered in 2011. So I think government will have to convince them that the safety measures, safeguards are in place, and then only I think the people will be convinced. But so far that has not been done, and government is still to convince the people and assure them that in case they start this reactor, that is Kashi Wazaki Kariwa, then they have to be 100% safety and security, because once there is a question mark and the region is susceptible to earthquakes and fire hazards, then I think it may be quite a wise step for the government not to pursue this, or assure to the people that there won't be any more tragedy of the kind that suffered in 2011. So therefore government has a lot of heavy lifting to do, but as of now I don't think people are convinced on the safety of this reactor. Thomas.
Yes, indeed. Major General Gigi Davidi, thank you very much, as always, for joining us here on NewsX World. It's a pleasure to speak to you. We now move on, and a massive pile-up involving 56 vehicles on a major highway in central Japan has left 1 dead and 26 injured. The crash happened on the Kan-etsu Expressway in Minakami, Gunma Prefecture, after 2 trucks skidded on icy roads. The chain reaction caused over 10 vehicles to catch fire, with many cars charred beyond recognition. A 77-year-old woman from western Tokyo was killed in the accident, and authorities closed a section of the highway and urged travellers between Kanto and Niigata to use alternative routes. We move on now, and China says it will continue to accelerate innovation in science and technology and also strengthen international cooperation, pledging to provide more public goods and make greater contributions to global economic growth. The comments came from Foreign Ministry spokesman Lin Juan. According to reports, China has surged ahead in the global race to develop humanoid robots, leading the world in related patents over the past 5 years and holding a major cost advantage in the supply chain. Lin said innovated in China has become a global buzzword in 2025, noting that China has entered the top 10 of the Global Innovation Index for the first time and has led the world for 3 straight years in top innovation clusters. He also highlighted China's advances in artificial intelligence, smart agriculture and desertification control, saying Chinese technology is boosting global recovery and improving livelihoods worldwide. Now, New York Governor Kathy Hochul declared a state of emergency on Friday ahead of Winter Storm Devin. The National Weather Service warns the storm will create hazardous travel from the Great Lakes to southern New England. Heavy snow of 5 to 8 inches is expected in parts of the region, while western Pennsylvania could see ice storms. Authorities are urging residents to stay off roads and prepare for disruptions to travel and power. We stay in the United States, and airlines across the US are facing major disruptions as Winter Storm Devin slams peak holiday travel. Thousands of flights were cancelled or delayed on Friday, according to FlightAware, and more than 1,800 flights were scrapped, with over 22,000 delayed by late afternoon. The worst impact was felt in the Northeast, especially at New York's JFK, Newark and LaGuardia airports, which accounted for more than half of the disruptions. JetBlue led cancellations, followed by Delta, American United and Republic Airways. Airlines have waived change fees for affected travellers, and the storm is bringing heavy snow from the Great Lakes to New England, with up to 8 inches forecast around New York City. New York and New Jersey have declared states of emergency, while New Jersey and Pennsylvania imposed highway restrictions, urging travellers to stay off the roads. We stay in New York, and it is moving to curb the impact of social media on young users, and Governor Kathy Hochul says platforms with infinite scroll, autoplay and algorithm-driven feeds must now carry warning labels about potential mental health harm. The law targets what it calls addictive design features and allows the State Attorney General to take action. Companies could face civil penalties of up to $5,000 per violation, and the rules apply to activity that takes place partly or entirely in New York. Hochul compares the labels to warnings on tobacco and plastic packaging. This move follows similar steps in states like California and Minnesota, and comes amid growing global concern over children's mental health and online harms. Well, that's all that we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more international updates.